Hi, I'm Stan Miller. I'm a volunteer with the Dishman Hills Conservancy. We're out here at Goldback Springs today. Goldback Springs is one of the very few places in the Dishman Hills where there's water all the time. If you look at the vegetation around here, you can see that it's wetland vegetation. We've got a huge area that is probably sucking moisture out of the ground, but right here at the springs it surfaces. I'll take a sample out. It's got a little bit of algae in it, but not much. A little bit of floating debris in there. But that won't affect what we're going to do. We're going to look today at pH of the water here, which is a measure of how acid the water is. And we would expect the pH of a natural water in an area like this to be between 6 and 8. This little pad on the end of this turns color depending on what the pH is. And I determine pH by comparing the color on the pad with the colors on the chart. And it looks like that's a pH of about 5. Now this is not a very accurate method for measuring, but somewhere between 5 and 6, which is probably okay for water. We're going to do another method for determining pH here. It still uses a color comparison, but the range is much less. If you notice on this one, the range was from pH 5 all the way up to pH 9. That's a pretty big range. What we're going to do now is measure on a scale of 6 to 7.6. These are more natural conditions. I'm adding an indicator to this bottle, 3 drops. And then we put it down next to the chart, and it looks like the pH is around 6.2 with this in the pond, and that was opposed to something like 5.5 or 6 using the other method. So this gives us a little more accurate way of measuring things. Okay, now what does pH mean? Well, like I said, it's a measure of how much acid there is in the water, and that's important because living things like pH is between about, like I said, about 6.5 and 7.5. Now, if it's different than that, the water is probably being polluted by something, or it's like in Yellowstone National Park where we have the hot springs. Those are very acidic springs, and so the pH will be very different there. But in natural places like Goldback Spring here, we expect it to be in the 6 or 7 range. Okay, now we've measured the pH in the pond here, or in the spring here, and we've gotten numbers around a little over 6, which is in the range that we want them to be. And in that range, it means that there's probably no contamination sources that are affecting the spring. It looks like the spring is barely flowing, but there's enough water for birds and small mammals to get their drinks as they need them. We're in good shape from a water quality standpoint, at least for pH. Now there's a number of other parameters that we will look at different times when we're back in the hills here looking at water.